Does everything have a bright side to it? Of course. Doesn't always outweigh the negatives, but everything has a bright side to it. This makes happiness a choice. And here we say that the discipline of being happy is the ultimate discipline. With that said, welcome to the Ultimate Discipline Podcast, where we meet with people who are practitioners of this exact discipline, and we hear their cool stories of cultivating happiness through challenges in their life. I am your host, Sean Greenspan. Let's get to it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to, I think this is going to be the 85th episode of the Happiness Discipline. If it's not, Sean, make it the 85th, so I sound right. I guess that's confusing for some people. Sean's also my video editor's name.
Yeah.
But I'm super excited to have Autumn on. She's a founder of Paleovalley, and this is a company that I was introduced to through business, and you guys were generous enough to send me product. And I actually had my friend who's a regenerative farmer, regenerative organic farmer. He is a nutritionist. Come over and he saw me taking some of the vitamin C supplements. And he goes, and he didn't see what brand it was. And he goes, without knowing anything, he goes, "Don't take that junk." I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "All vitamin C supplements are bad." And I was like, "That's a big statement." And I was like, "Look at this." And I showed him and he goes, "They don't use citric acid?" And I was like, "What?" And then, you guys sent me everything. He started looking at the bone broth or like the collagen, and he started looking at even the beef sticks, and he's like, "What is this brand?" He's now a customer of your guys, and since I've got a lot closer with the brand, heard about your backstory, and I've been just anxiously waiting for this episode. So I'm so glad to have you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. I've heard wonderful things about you, and I need to know, who is that farmer? I want to know this farmer. That's amazing.
It's his name's Anthony Love Escobar, the best name I've ever had and heard.
I love that. Awesome. I'll have to
Yeah,
look it up.
yeah, I'll definitely connect you guys. Me and Anthony and Scott and Mike run wellness retreats. So something we'll have to unpack. But I'm so grateful to have you on. And I would love if you could give a little bit of background about yourself, which is also a little background about the companies you started.
Yeah. So my name's Adam, and I grew up in small town Montana in Glendive, actually. And I have a wonderful set of parents. But when I hit about 10 or 11, I started to develop digestive issues, and no doctor in that town could really help me. And so we just kind of did what we could. I took gas X or digestive aids or whatever, and that happened until I hit my teens, and mental health issues started to surface. And I was then in both physical and emotional pain. And we tried antidepressants and all the traditional routes, and nothing really helped me. And so I really kind of glommed onto using substances to just kind of numb out, just check out, to not feel. I'm also a highly sensitive person. So I think this just allowed me to check out and be somewhere else. And I did that until I got kicked out of my parents' house when I was, before I even graduated high school. And I also had friends who went to jail. And that kind of woke me up to, wow, this isn't probably the best path. And luckily, I pulled it together enough to get to college, to get a degree, and then moved to Los Angeles and danced. And I had all of it looked from the outside that I was doing well, right? I was working as a celebrity fitness trainer. I danced professionally. But when you really knew me, you saw that I was suffering. And that's when my husband, Chaz, started to notice that. He's just like, "You're suffering in silence, and we really need to do something. You're breaking out. You have this digestive issues. You look pregnant at night. You're crying. You have anxiety, and just you're not really living the life that most people would think someone like you are, someone who's a celebrity fitness trainer." So he got on the internet after we visited several doctors in Los Angeles, and decided that food could be a nice first step, and that maybe my digestive issues could be remedied by changing my diet. And I thought he was crazy, but we I did. And I was like, "Okay, Chaz, yeah, no doctor, if the doctors wouldn't know about this, why would this matter?" But we did. We started shopping at Pasadena Farmers Market, and we really made a concerted effort to stop with the processed foods and to start adding the nutrient dense foods. And in 60, actually just 30 days, my digestive issues, when we were very strict about that, they went away. I could not even believe that over a decade, of suffering could be fixed within 30 days. And so then I invited 200 of my friends that I knew through this Facebook group. And I said, guys, like I've had this remarkable transformation. Do you want to try what I did? And kind of validate for me that this is in fact a worthwhile use of my time. And they did. And a lot of people saw really remarkable results. So I went on one last world tour with Tracy Anderson, actually with Jennifer Lopez. And then when I got off that tour, my husband and I founded our company to try and create options for people who wanted to do what I did, essentially, eat less processed foods and have a clean diet that they could sustain, even if they're on the road or even if they just hate to cook.
That's the story that I think people would love to have about themselves, right? It's like it worked for me. Um, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Were you open to this being a solution?
Hmm.
Or were you like, was like your husband just completely pushing it on you? Or are you like, hey, like this sounds crazy, but I am open to it?
No, I was so open, right? There is a part of you that starts just to feel hopeless after a while. But I think Chaz and his hope around it and his, decision that this would not be that our future together, we wouldn't have to suffer.
Mm,
That kind of infused me with a lot of energy and excitement around the possibility. And of course, he was there. It's really hard to make change in isolation, right? But when you have a buddy who's willing to do it with you and someone who's willing to be as devoted, it's kind of exciting. And so we kind of just set off on the path together. But I wasn't, I didn't really believe that it would work, but I was excited about
mm,
the possibility and really surprised by the outcome for sure.
yeah. Because I always wonder what mindset, plays into it. One of my mentors says, if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them.
Yeah.
And it drives me crazy because I believe that, you know, every bit of that sentence. And, it's not always easy to believe in miracles or something like that. But without that belief, I think, change can be a lot harder. But amazing story. Congratulations on the change. And thank you for going from a probably really fun job of following JLo around to serving others. I mean, that's just been outstanding. And I think it's pretty cool. Brands like yours that are just mission driven, they shine. And I know you guys are doing well and growing and bringing out new products and touching new lives. And I appreciate it. I think it's awesome what you guys are doing. So congrats on that.
Well, thank you. And it's funny, everybody, many people say, "Oh, you went from JLo to beef sticks," but honestly, like it was something shifted in me so powerfully that I enjoy this work more than any work ever, right?
Of
I love,
course.
of course I saw the world and that was great, but there's something about like finding this alignment with what you think is your specific purpose in the world that just it doesn't even feel like work. I love Monday. I love Mondays. I can't wait. Mondays are my favorite. So no, I feel very lucky to have found this too.
Yeah. I love Mondays. That's the clip there. Um,
Yeah.
I know it's awesome. And it's funny when I was in college, I really enjoyed my school. I was playing sports, training, and I remember I called my mom like one day and woke her up at like 6 a.m. She's like, "Oh, you just getting up?" I was like, "I've been up for 2 hours." She's like, "What college kids waking up at 4 a.m.?" It's like, "Go to bed at 8 because I'm just getting up and like doing it." And she was like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because life's too good to sleep in." And
Mm,
I was working I had a cool company, traveling a lot, big company. Um, and then I realized I started setting my alarm as late as possible.
mm,
And that's funny that you say it because on every day of the week. And I realized I was just like, trying to, okay, got to be at work at 9, leave at 8:34. I can wake up at 8:17 and be out the door. And I
yeah.
was like, when you live like that, it almost seems like there's something you're like avoiding, right? It's like, why not like get up and get after it? And that's that, well, to just cut that story, that's like what led me to start Greenspan Consulting
Mm,
was like, I want to be stoked about Monday, even Sunday night, like let's check the calendar, let's see what's coming, for the week.
yeah.
No, it's fun, and I'm so glad that you've been able to find that. Let me ask you a question that I bet a lot of people have. I've eaten your bars, I've eaten your supplements, everything. You guys are absolutely one of the cleaner brands out there, which is something I've been trying to focus on. Um, Obviously, there's sacrifices you need to make to be clean. One is money, right? Like you either need to charge more or make less, of course, because a lot of times cleaner products, cleaner processes are more expensive. Um, Outside of money, what are reasons, and obviously we don't need to talk about specific brands, but what are reasons that brands might not be opting towards the cleanest method?
I just think a lack of knowledge sometimes around things. And I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at nutrition, it's very, very complex. And I'm actually doing this docu-series called Rethink Meat. And the first episode is devoted to like why we believe what we believe, particularly about meat, but there's other, layers in nutrition, about carbohydrates and vegetable oils and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know a lot of companies who have someone as a holistic nutritionist that creates their products. A lot of companies are marketers, right? They're like, oh, look at, what? People seem to be responding to this ingredient. This seems to be the best thing, the hot thing right now. We're going to put in a supplement, make it cheap, market it well, and bam, there you go. Whereas we're kind of like, we're not so in like what's hot and happening. It's like what's enduring. What have our ancestors been doing? What are people not having access to? And then how do we preserve the nutrient quality? So I think it's a lack of information, and I think it's obviously money for sure, but I think it's a lack of information too for most companies.
I tend to agree with you because I believe that, look, I'm a marketer, okay? If I had um that info on like some of these brands, I could then market it and charge more, like or sell more or whatever the brand wants. I actually definitely not going to name names, but just started working with a client. I said, "Cool, what is your unique selling proposition? Why not even your unique selling proposition? I'll come up with that. What is like the meat behind your unique selling proposition? Like, what's your differentiator? Why do you do what you do? Why do you have this mix?" And they were kind of like, you know, it's a good blend. It's like a good mix. Like it was just kind of like it's what other people are doing. I was like, at least you're kind of like honest that it's just, you're trying to build maybe you're trying to build a brand around community. Cool, you know. Um, but it's interesting. I always think product first, marketing. But
Oh, I was going to say the other thing is experience too. Had I not had this very visceral, life changing experience and been, like when I veer off of it, it changes the quality of my life. I think so. Information and experience, both.
yeah, um, well, if you don't mind, I want to get into a few questions around like diet and some of these things that I have, because so I'll tell you the way I kind of live, learn, and experience. This is probably I'm pretty confident to say I'm not doing it the best way, but this is the way that I'm doing it.
Okay.
Um, is that I would say that I'm a practitioner more than a student, right?
Hmm.
An example I can give on that is like I don't know much about running form, never had a running coach, never trained for running. I just like to run. I run a lot, and I've done 10 ultra marathons and have 10 top 10 finishes. It's one of
Wow.
those things like I don't know certain things, but like I've done it where like I feel like I could help other people out.
Yeah.
That's different than being a student, right? There's benefits to both.
Yeah.
So when I bring that to like my nutrition, I do what like feels good to me, which is it's almost always it's like eat as close to the source as possible. I
Yeah.
try to understand nutrition labels. And like I know it sounds silly, but like make sure you know everything that's on there and don't say, "Oh, I know canola oil." It's like, "No, you don't. Do you know that it comes from like this like gross black sludge that they make in Brazil and ship over to China?" It's like what I know is okay. I know a pumpkin seed. I've seen it in my life. I know where it comes from, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm basically trying to like understand this all. And my brother's girlfriend recently became vegetarian, and I realized like I didn't have I didn't have like anything to like back up why, meat's good for us. I eat meat and I eat a lot of meat. Um, I know that beef has like a lot of micronutrients in it that, are good, but like I guess I didn't have anything to say like why it's important not to be vegetarian or vegan. I'm not saying that that's your stance, but I know you guys make beef sticks and a lot of, beef, things that have beef protein or whatever. So I'd love to understand that element.
What a beautiful question. Yeah, I just finished. So I'm doing this docu-series called Rethinking Meat because we had a lot of people unsubscribing from our meat delivery service, Wild Pastures, because they were going vegan. And I was like, oh no, a lot of people don't know. And I think any adult is able to make a decision that feels good for them, right? And I think for certain periods of time, short term, you go into the vegan diet, you go into the carnivore diet, like it might work for you short time. My main problem with it is children. Okay. So the reason the animal products are important for us is number one, really high quality protein. Okay, there's something called the DIAS score, rates proteins on their absorption, their composition. Do they have complete amino acid composition? You can think of amino acids as like the letters in the alphabet. And so if we have all of the letters, a protein source is higher quality and it's absorbed better. And if we don't, often plant sources don't have all the letters and they're incomplete. So protein is one thing, and protein matters, for body composition, right? There's something called the protein leverage hypothesis that says we're eating for protein essentially. And if we eat fat or if we eat carbohydrate snacks, we're going to have to eat more because protein is very satiating. So body composition is one. Also, of course, for children and stunting, right? There's a lot of children in other countries, underdeveloped countries, who have problems stunting, and it's shown that animal products, an egg, for example, in one study in Ecuador, can improve stunting rates, right, and physical development. And stunting is also associated with
Mm,
cognitive development. So protein, very, very important. Also, nutrients. There's specific nutrients that you can only get in animal products. Vitamin B12 is one of them. Heme iron is another. Vitamin D3. And then you have lesser known nutrients, carnosine, carnitine, anserine. These are all nutrients that are really, really specific to animal products, right? And the
hmm
last reason is some nutrients are available in both plants and animal products, for example, omega 3 fatty acids or vitamin A. But the forms in animals are the forms that our bodies prefer. So, a lot of times, plant nutrients can be inhibited, their absorption can be inhibited by certain types of anti nutrients. And anytime you have a plant and animal form, our body prefers the animal form. So, the high quality protein, the nutrients, some that you can't get anywhere else, and the fact that they're more readily accessible to our body. These are reasons that
mm,
we don't want to take animal products out of the diet. And you've seen at every stage of life, there's research to support, like I said, in children, cognitive development, growth, reduce in stunting. Also, you have in middle age, like diets that have, paleo diet, for example, Mediterranean diet. These are meat inclusive diets where you consider the quality of the other foods, right? So it's not the standard American diet. We're not eating a bunch of fast foods, but those diets show a lot of different improvements in cardiovascular risk and weight loss, and then even in aging populations, probably because of their really high quality protein, which we need more of as we age, and their readily bioavailable nutrients, which helps prevent malnutrition, which can also be a problem when you grow older and all of a sudden you don't want to eat as much, right? So it can promote longevity. There was a recent analysis in 175 different countries that meat was associated with a greater life expectancy. Those who ate more meat had a greater life expectancy. So there's a lot of reasons that meat's really important. I don't think everyone needs to eat ton of it. We don't all need to go carnivore. I think what you said in the very beginning is the most important thing. Pay attention. Listen to your body. How is it responding to what you're eating? I think that's how you find your perfect diet. So my diet is a lot of vegetables and a lot of high quality animal products. Not, but more vegetables and more plants. Actually, my husband's is the exact opposite. He needs way more animal products and fewer plants. But I think at the end of the day, whole foods, pay attention, plant and animal source nutrients, and you're going to be good to go.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I noted the protein leverage hypothesis, and I can tell you when I eat more protein, I feel better. I'm also I'm also like train. It just keeps me satiated. Is kind of where I was getting. It makes me feel full, but I also just like feel better. For example, when I eat, I just came back from Italy. And, yes, I feel better when I eat bread and pasta there, but still bread and pasta, right?
Yeah.
And, when you eat that, it makes me feel like a little bit heavier. I don't have any gluten intolerance, celiac, nothing. I could eat a sub every day for lunch and be fine. Um, and I'm training twice a day, so like I don't really care about like the like it wouldn't change how I look. It just more like energetically, like I feel like kind of like schlumpy.
Hmm.
I also, it was interesting, the nutrients you can only get from meat. For me, like, again, I am happily not a student of the game like you are. And like, just like, if I think about it, like, if I, like, and again, I don't want this to go to direction of like, don't be vegetarian, don't be vegan, but
Yeah.
just like anything, that if I'd say, hey, I'm going to go on this new diet, but because of this new diet, I now need supplements. Um, it seems strange. It just seems strange to me. It's like that is what diet is supposed to be. Like I actually, I actually don't really like to take supplements. So like, sometimes I use them like sparingly. So like the vitamin C, I take 3 days before and after any travel. The neuro effect that you guys gave me, I basically take before a string of calls. I make sure there's no supplement I take more than 5 days a month because that's just my own random thing. I just believe try to get everything. I want to be not dependent on anything. Never drank a cup of coffee in my life. Um,
Wow. I don't do caffeine
you know,
either. Cool.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't know. I try not to be dependent on that stuff, but like I feel like it should come from the diet. So um, that's yeah. I definitely appreciate that big time. What's up?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you two things. A, I super respect that. And our supplements are actually food. So we don't have any isolated synthetic supplements. So you can take them and, know that you're not like developing any, you're not going to shut off any internal production or whatever. The second thing is kids, right? They did this really cool study in Finland where they had the vegan diets planned by a dietitian and it included supplementation in vitamin D form, and they still found significant differences between vegan and omnivore children in terms of their nutrient intake. And so, yeah, you can supplement. It doesn't always matter. It won't always compensate. And I do think that is just evidence of, yeah, this might not be a perfect diet, especially for children. Like I said, vegan for adult, whatever. I mean, do your thing, but for kids, like
Yeah,
there's been demonstrated irreversible cognitive deficits that even when you add meat back in, if you miss a critical window of development, that's pretty
yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. That is good. I almost feel like kids' intuition is so strong. It's like let them do what like if they don't want something, I feel like a kid would just tell you, Like weirdly enough, my girlfriend doesn't eat red meat, okay?
Yeah.
She stopped eating red meat when she was 6. She
Wow.
told her parents, "I don't eat red meat." They fed it to her like again in like in a lasagna like a couple weeks later actually, and she like threw up and she just like as a 6-year-old, she didn't know. She just like knew it didn't really agree with her body.
Yeah.
But something that I always like to talk about is that like meat doesn't equal meat because the quality can be completely different. And it's funny. This actually comes from business, Autumn, right? Like I get people that tell me, I'll like reach out, hey, like let me help. I want to help you build an ambassador program. They say, oh, we tried that. Ambassador programs don't work. And what I want to honestly say to them is like, hey, I got 40 clients. It works for all of them. Great. They're all in the fitness and wellness space. They're all direct to consumer. So like maybe you could have done it differently, right? And that's the same thing about making a hamburger. Like, do you have any idea where that cow came from, what that cow ate? Um, and I think a lot of this is about the greater message, right? Like, yeah, nutrition, but it's also like just understanding that, you know, like even going vegan can be completely different. Like I know vegans that eat French fries, and I know vegans that eat a tremendously well balanced diet with supplementation, and it's nuts and seeds heavy, and it's like I could get down with that, for sure more. So I think that's a big thing is understand for people to understand the whole picture for themselves.
Totally. That's what I was saying. Yeah. Just start with whole foods. Like, what did your ancestors eat? Like, what part of the world did you come from? Do you need more, plant based nutrients? Or, like, are you from higher latitudes and you need a greater percentage of animal-based nutrients. But then, yeah, just experiment, listen, and take quality into consideration. Like you're saying, there's research to suggest that, and I'm actually doing this for my dissertation right now, the beef nutrient density project, like, does the way an animal's raised matter for human health? And it's a big question, but you can see very distinct changes in the final product depending on how that animal's raised. So that's a very big
Mm.
consideration.
I I absolutely love that. I want to pivot a little to regenerative organic farming. This is a good topic.
Mm.
Um, you know, what you guys are doing with wild pastures is sweet.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so for those that don't, well, do you want to give the 30-second spiel on what regenerative organic farming is, for
Yeah.
those that maybe aren't aware?
Yeah, I do. So there's three types of agriculture being practiced today, basically. There's conventional that comes with, a lot of pesticides, fertilizers. Essentially, we're working against nature. We have factory farms and we have monocultures. And then we have something called sustainable. And that's kind of in the middle, right? We're not making anything worse, but we're not always making it better. And sometimes organic agriculture actually fits in this box because there's still a lot of tillage in organic agriculture, not by everyone, but by some people. And tillage is one of the more environmentally destructive practices. And then the third type is regenerative based agriculture. Now, regenerative agriculture at its heart is not only not doing harm to the land, but it's actually returning it to a higher, more worthy or healthier state. And so it's looking at ecological outcomes, designing a very context specific plan for that particular land and saying, okay, how do we improve soil organic matter? How do we improve water holding capacity? How do we improve biodiversity? How do we improve the nutrient and the water cycles? And how do we just make this, we rehabilitate this land? Because for the last 10,000 years, we've been living in a very extractive relationship with the earth, taking out more than we have been putting back. And we've lost a lot of our topsoil as a result. As the regenerative agriculture enthusiasts have come back to kind of heal the land so that future generations can still grow their own food, their fiber. If we lose the topsoil, then we have a rude awakening. So regenerative agriculture addresses that.
Thank you for that. And hey, it might be our generations as well. Some studies show.
Yeah.
Um, You know, I really got introduced to this topic deeply through my friends that I run these retreats with, where we focus on getting people more in touch with nature. And then really a lot of Dr. Zach Bush's learning, what he's studying is I've been just kind of devouring what he does. And I just love his approach and, kind of the connection to nature. And it's funny, when sometimes he says things like, "Hey, like you buy just kale at the supermarket. That kale's coming from Peru, sprayed with pesticides, sits in a truck covered in gas,
Mm.
then it gets sprayed with whatever at the grocery store." And the way that I kind of like am looking at this all is that I think the real battle we have to fight is against our own conveniences.
Yeah.
I think, like, look, right now you have a podcast. You're nice enough to come on my podcast. You have Wild Pastures, Wild Pasture Burgers, Paleo, which I'm going to in 2 weeks when I go to Colorado.
Yay!
Um,
Let me know.
yeah.
Let us
Oh
know.
yeah. I'll reach out to you for sure. Um, you have Paleo Valley, like mom, like a lot going on. For someone to say like, hey, like, I need to go drive an hour up the road to the natural spring and fill up 30 gallons of water and bring it back down, right? Like some people be like, "Are you crazy? How do you have time for that?" But then someone else might be like, "You don't understand. I would miss sleep for this. Like, like this is water, right? Like this is what we're putting into our bodies." Um, it's almost like a complete readjustment that I think we need to do, because I've always said that, like, I want land. I want to have like a little farm. But my thought the whole time was like, just have someone else, handle it for me, knock it out. I just, I think it'd be cool to have land to run on and, camp and whatever. Now it's like almost the opposite. It's like I want to spend time with my hand in the soil and like
Mm.
I want to grow my food and like be a part of that process and then eat that little pepper that I've been growing. It's like that's like our connection to the world. And there's so much nonverbal communication that happens there. And I think, I don't know where the disconnect happened. And it happened to me too, right? Like it happened to all of us. But what I like about regenerative organic farming is besides it's like our connection to the environment, it's a spiritual approach to nutrition.
Hmm.
And that's really what I'm all about is like, get that information from the soil, from the minerals in your water. Like that's like real learning. Everything else is a distraction.
Absolutely. It's kind of like two big ideas. Like in nutrition, there's something called nutritionism, where we're looking at proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And as you've alluded to, food is so much more than that, right? There's thousands of nutrients in food. Then there's the microorganisms living in the soil. And there's one study that showed you can actually there's organisms in the soil that improve neurotransmitters in our brain, that and so there's like scientifically validated reasons for our connection, and the reason we need to be in connection with the earth. There's grounding, right? Has this electromagnetic charge, and it can reduce inflammation in our body. um, and so, yeah, we all need to reestablish that connection. We've been living in cities. Most of us have no idea where our food even comes from. And we have to also remember that we are part of nature. Like, there's no doing a shitty job raising your food using chemicals and pesticides. And there's no separating that from human health, because we're all the same, right? We have to remember, like Fred Provenza said, he's one of my favorites, that we're members of nature's communities, and only when we take care of them do they ultimately take care of us.
It's it could be so simple
It
and
could.
beautiful. And I think, but look, like it's funny. When you know something but you haven't acted on it yet. Like I'm drinking natural spring water out of but out of plastic, right? You know what I mean? It's like could be doing better there. Man, I flew in like late last night and I just picked up eight gallons of natural spring water. I was like, I'm not gonna drink shitty water, but it's still in plastic. And then it was funny because I'm talking to my dad about it, and it's like, dude, plastic's fine. And I was like, what would happen if you left that plastic water bottle in your car in the summer? He goes, dude, I'm throwing it out. The plastic's leaching in there. I'm like, how'd that bottle get there? You
Yeah.
know? And he's like, and you know, um, this is to show everyone that like I'm trying my best, and I'm not trying to put myself ever on a pedestal, but
No.
I feel like there's some of these things that just like I know, and I just need, I'm in the process of acting on, and that's you do need to enjoy the process as well.
100%. And it's just all those little decisions. In my view, my focus obviously is nutrition. And so I have that element dialed in, but there's a lot of parts of my life that could be a lot more dialed into, just like you're saying. I could address my clothing better. Like you said, we're all just where we are, and we just got to take the next best step.
Yeah, and so like clothing's like another thing, right? Like we just think, oh, you go to your store to get clothing, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
at one point in time, we made clothing or didn't wear clothing.
Yeah.
So it's like in reality, it's just a major adjustment to understanding how to live closer to nature.
Mhm.
Simplicity is always the answer. Closer to nature is always the answer.
Yeah.
What do you do for your water?
Oh, we have this amazing place called El Dorado. It's actually the best water in the country. And that is one thing we do really prioritize. And we were those crazy people driving, like when we lived in Southern California, we drove like 45 minutes to pick up our water every week. Because, once we had a child, we were just really awake to, and once we saw how my health improved, really awake to, oh my gosh, what we're putting in every day, that really matters. And so we do El Dorado Springs. And they just deliver it in our glass cans or glass bottles. And my sister comes over and she's always like, "Oh my gosh, it's like a spa in here with this water." So, but yeah, I know it's not always where everybody can be, and so just getting a filtration system too is a great first start. And just switching out something else you're drinking, soda, caffeine for water. Hey, that's a good start too.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. What we just are about to order is like basically a filtration system. It's about this big, and w- I live nomadically,
Yeah.
so every month I need to crank and put it on the new sink that we're at. Um, and some, everyone has their excuses, right? Like around the holidays, I go spend a few weeks at home where it's like my parents are separated, so a couple days at my mom's, a couple of days at my dad's. It's like, I need to figure out what the best, solution is. But and sometimes it's just buying nice bottled spring water, at the store, Mountain Valley or whoever. Um,
Mhm.
I have a feeling for anyone that has like a challenge doing that, financially, the way I like to look at it is you are your biggest asset, and assets appreciate in value and return, value. And the more you invest in yourself, the more you're worth,
Mhm.
right? And I know it's difficult when there's not a number attached to it and a bank doesn't secure it, but for anyone out there that has struggle mentally, paying $3-4 for a bottle of water, I hope that helps.
Yeah, and that's what they say, right? We as a country spend less on food, right? And more on medical care eventually, right? And then we lose quality of life. So, yeah, if we just are willing to spend a little bit more up front, we can improve the quality of our lives and potentially prevent stuff. And so I think it all kind of balances out in the end.
Absolutely, I love that attitude. Um, I also want to talk about cows in general. Cows being the solution.
Mm.
Um, well, we'll get to cows actually. Why? So glyphosate came to my mind while we're talking about water.
Mm, mhm.
Um, it was a bummer to hear that my dad didn't know what glyphosate was. And
Oh.
it's funny because I'm picking on you, Pops. It's funny because, he tells me I'm uninformed, and it's a little bit of a sticking point because I don't watch the news at all. Um, I don't, if you want the truth, I actually just got the Instagram handle people who watch the news, and I'm going to make it a hilarious meme page, and it's going to definitely bug and go viral.
I don't really watch the
So,
news either.
okay, good. So
I'm
that
just
doesn't offend you.
yeah, not at all. No, I know I
um,
get a little slack from my mom about it too.
Yeah, and it's all good. Everyone, to each their own, as they say. But it's fun. It's just funny that that's one of the things that wasn't on his radar. The
Mhm.
reason the topic came up was I add humic acid to my water. It's actually a Dr. Zach Bush product. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his line. I think that's like his only product.
Yeah.
um, and he was asking about it. Talk to me about glyphosate. I mean, it ties right into regenerative organic farming too.
Yeah. Gosh, you know what? I just took my little son, he's 8, to see the movie Common Ground. Have you seen it yet?
No,
It's so good. And during the part about glyphosate specifically, he looked at me and he said, "Mom, you know you're making me hate humanity by watching this, right?" And so glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is the most prevalent used herbicide. So, and just to put it in context for like, because I've been doing research on this, about 250 million pounds of glyphosate are used on the corn and soy grown just for animal feed in the United States in 2018. And so
just for animal feed.
just for animal feed, soy and corn. Yeah, so it's crazy. I think it was like 235,000 pounds around there. And Dr. Zach Bush, does a lot of work on glyphosate and its impacts on our immune system and our gut function, and believes that it kind of degrades those. And when you degrade your gut function, right, that becomes a systemic function because our gut is essentially something that protects us from things that aren't supposed to be in our body. And so when those barriers are breached, right, we can end up with any number of abnormalities. And Dr. Stephanie Seneff is very much anti-glyphosate, and she does a lot of research on the topic, and links it to the increases in autism and other diseases. And we do see, as we've started to use it more, and there's a lot of factors at play here, but it's potentially one of them. And then we have thousands of lawsuits, right? So, International Agency for Research on Cancer named glyphosate a probable carcinogen. We have Dwayne Lee Johnson, he was a groundskeeper who won, I think originally was awarded, I think 289 million because he was able to prove that glyphosate caused his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And there's other couples and literally thousands of other people waiting in the wings for their day in court. And so glyphosate, and here's the crazy thing, glyphosate is only one ingredient, right? When you put the whole formulation together, Roundup, there's other chemicals in there. And we don't know the concomitant effects, like what happens and then we have other chemicals that we're using in agriculture, 2,4-D and atrazine, and just what happens when we use all of these pesticides. Nobody really knows, but it probably isn't good, right? If it's killing off animals, endangered species, if it's killing off the life in the soil, if it's killing our gut function, I mean, it's definitely not a good thing, and it's something that we actively avoid. My husband, actually, we lived on a golf course before this and tested his levels of glyphosate, and they were really, really high, and so he had to take measures to also reduce his levels. But yeah, I think glyphosate, we definitely need to get it out of our food supply. We definitely need to wake up to its potential to devastate our health and the health of our environment.
Yeah. I, you know, I don't know too much about what it does to us. My understanding is it's sprayed everywhere on everything. It's not water soluble, so it runs into the river, it gets evaporated, right? It's everywhere. It goes between the tight junctions of our blood-brain barrier, and the same with our gut lining, which, isn't good. And it kind of infiltrates there, which, that's your neurology. So that not only affects your health, but your decision making and things like that. Um, Assuming people are going to take some time, do research, or just take our word and say glyphosate's not good for you. What can you do to avoid it?
Yeah. And one thing I want to say on that, Stephanie Seneff believes that it interferes with the production of the aromatic amino acids. And they say their claim is that we don't have the same system, but our gut bacteria do, and it does interfere with their production of these amino
Mm,
acids. And so what I would do is definitely avoid foods, that are sprayed with pesticides if you can. So do organic as often as you possibly can. If you can't do organic, there's something called the Clean 15 that can also give you which foods are potentially more degraded or use more pesticides in their production. And so that's what I do. I know you can take the humic acid. I haven't used that particularly myself. Dr. Stephanie Seneff also believes that there's a compound in apple cider vinegar called acetobacter that would break down that glyphosate molecule. So whenever you're eating out or somewhere where you can't necessarily control the quality of your food, I would definitely go that route. But yeah, choosing organic, knowing your farmer if you can, if you're somewhere where that's possible, looking them in the eye, asking them about their practices, and then, yeah, humic, fulvic acids, apple cider vinegar, and other things could also potentially be helpful.
I, I like both approaches. It's like, avoid and treat, right? Because most people aren't going to be able to, by the end of the day today, change their entire food
Yeah.
situation, and water situation, as quick as possible. I've actually found looking at the clean 15 and the that what the dirty dozen or whatever
Yeah.
has helped a lot just to understand, kind of a little bit more about what we should put in our body and what we shouldn't. And yeah.
I thought of one other strategy that I've heard about, and I can't remember the particular researcher. Now, this is more of a theoretical approach, but they believe that glyphosate can come in and substitute for glycine, an amino acid in our body. And so, potentially, by supplying enough glycine in our body, we could cut down the possibility that that will happen. So glycine is found in bone broth, right? And other, like the skins of animals, even in pork rinds. It's not something a lot of us get good every day, but if you eat collagen and you eat bone broth, that is one way that you could increase your production of glycine and potentially keep that from happening.
Oh, cool. I've opened like six new tabs just quickly of things that I want to research after this, just from talking to you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the glyphosate glycine. That's really interesting. I wish I could remember the name of the researcher, but he was a very, very, very well published and I believe educated guy. So I'll send you his name after this. I can look it up.
Please do, please do. All right. I have a question for you. I know you have a hard stop here in 10 minutes, and I want to. We've touched on some of the most important topics, even though we're going to skip cows for now. Um,
Sad.
and I want to get a little into the woo woo spiritual stuff where like I kind of, I would say, am living. Um, I'm a natural skeptic on every study,
Mm.
even if it's not given to me by a company that leads me to want to buy their product. If it's just from research or whatever. And the reason is there's too many variables, right? If 100,000 people all do this diet and 100,000 people do it, and it's such huge study and it's over a long time, you know, it still wouldn't prove it to me because like I could say like, cool, well, like, hey, um, when you eat like, okay, let's just say people went carnivore, people went vegetarian. It was a ton of people, a long time, awesome. It's like, well, like maybe like vegetables are more high fiber, and maybe by doing that, they also restricted their calorie intake, which had to do with longevity and, like
Oh yeah.
whatever. Like there can be like themes, not to mention you just can't, you can't measure everything. And because of that, I like to do a lot of like self study, and I like to just do what's intuitive, right? Like clean, right? Like, why does spring water make sense to me? Well, that's where water comes from, right? It's like,
Yeah.
water doesn't come from a bottle. That's not whatever, it comes from a spring. Food close to the source that was raised well. Like that just makes sense, It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know any other way to put it. Um, with all that said, you could drive yourself crazy optimizing for the perfect diet, getting blood tests, seeing how everything goes.
Yeah.
Um, do you like, I don't want to put a thought on you. My thought is that no matter what, like the mindset that you bring to something is actually going to supersede everything else.
Mm.
So, like, here's a great example. I have a friend who's like a bodybuilder, but he's like natural and healthy, and I actually really respect his views on health. And he was like, dude, you absolutely cannot build muscle in a calorie deficit, or you cannot build weight, in a calorie deficit. It's impossible. And I'm like, cool. I get that it's improbable because, the law of thermodynamics, but like I feel like a fundamental law more fundamental than the law of thermodynamics is some law kind of maybe close to like the law of vibrations and the law of attraction that are more just about like, your belief of like the food you're putting,
Mm.
in you and what it's going to do. Right. And like, if I told you, hey, I was in a calorie deficit for a year and I gained 10 pounds, like that wouldn't be the craziest thing that's ever happened in the history of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you kind of agree with that, even though obviously you have these companies focus on nutrition and wellness. Do you resonate with that like same thing that there's like the mindset and like energy you bring to something supersedes anything in this like material world?
I love this question. So yeah, I do think there's an element of truth there because it's about your nervous system, right? Even how the food that you're eating will be digested differently, absorbed differently based on the state of your nervous system, right? And then there's just like you said, very powerful, the power of belief, right? And this optimism and this just kind of like I don't know, just energy around this is going to be good for me, right? Just like even coming to believe that this is working for me, right? The world is conspiring for me. This food is going to be good for me. No, I think that's absolutely. I think your nervous system is the state of your nervous system. Being able to regulate your nervous system is more important than almost anything else. And I don't say that lightly because I think food is the one thing that we can control and is the foundation. It's the one piece you can kind of toggle, another piece that you can toggle that will literally make everything better, right? The food, and plus, like it, I like that they go in tandem because our physical body is made from the food that we eat. The signaling molecules, our hormones, our antibodies, our neurotransmitters, these are all made from food. And so the quality is really, really, really important. But you can eat a perfect diet and you can be dysregulated emotionally. You can have a nervous system that is running on stress and you still won't be healthy, right? And when it comes
Abs-
to like just thermodynamics, I mean, people, you say, how much does stress, how many calories is stress, how many calories is a lack of sleep, because we know both of those factors just impact the way that our body responds to the food that we eat. So yeah, I think I'm actually in somatic therapy right now. Do you know what that is?
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So no.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got the food piece first. And I feel like that gave me a layer of biological stability that I didn't have, right? I was up and I was down.
Hmm.
But you could have gone the other way, right? I could have found somatic therapy and maybe chilled out a little enough to listen to the feedback, to hear what my body was trying to tell me about the foods that I should be eating. So I think can go both ways. And yeah, your nervous system and your thoughts and how your thoughts impact your nervous system can't be underestimated. Super important.
You're very balanced. I appreciate that. And yeah, it could go, either way. And it's funny because this is where me and him, this is where our healthy debate landed. Was I said, similar to what you said, you can eat healthy, do all the right things, and you won't get the results if you're not, clear on the inside, right?
Yeah.
It's a great start. And I said, cool, yeah, but also the other way. Like, I think you could eat, again, we've talked about how important I think nutrition is. I think you could eat like shit, but if you're so like dialed in internally, and, I could, we could have a whole podcast on what that means. I think that could supersede it. And Sam said something to me that I loved. And he said, the answer is both. The answer is and, right? As people say, it's like, dial it all in, right? Like he was like, cool, Sean, I agree with you,
Yeah.
but also don't drink glyphosate water.
Yeah, and there's like Mark David, he's like this mentor of mine, and he taught this story about this doctor who wanted to lose weight and he didn't want to change his diet, right? And so all he asked him to do, slow down. If you're gonna eat those Big Macs for lunch every day, which he did, just that was his ritual. He said, all I want you to do is slow down, pay attention, enjoy every single bite. And so he started there. And what the guy found was when he slowed down and he paid attention, he didn't like Big Macs. And so I think, like you said, like you could start either or, but I think people who are really dialed in and who are really calm and have this great abundant mindset, like they'll start to notice that. And I think they'll both shift. Usually. I'm sure there are exceptions, but I just really like that story. Even if you start at somewhere, slowing down, paying attention.
I absolutely love it too. That is where we are going to wrap up Autumn. I think it's so cool that this is the first time we ever talked and we just dove into it. And you're in Colorado, you're in Boulder, right?
Boulder. Yeah, Boulder.
Boulder, cool. I just convinced my girlfriend that we're flying there October 27th. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. Let's get a burger. Burgers on me.
I would love that. No, burgers on us for sure, because it's our restaurant. So no, we'd love that, and I love this conversation. Thank you for making it amazing and easy, and it was awesome.
Thank you so much. Hope everyone enjoyed. Hey, thank you for watching today's episode. If you got something out of this, it would mean so much if you could just take a second and give us a rating on whatever platform you're watching it on. And it would mean so much to the world if you could just find one person that you think this message resonates with and you can share that with them. Thank you so much for your support. Looking forward to share the next episode with you.